Ranvir. So the hope is then that Boris is going to bring us some...
The Sun newspaper today, and it may well be based on the fact that scientists in South Africa, where the Omicron variant was first identified, are now saying that although this variant appears to be spreading faster, and that basically means that the time between being infected with it and infecting somebody else is much shorter than it was with the Delta variant and others. In fact, the vaccines do seem to be a good defence against this new variant. That's what early reports are showing. And also that those who are infected with the Omicron variant of COVID, in them the disease is milder. So that all in all perhaps is what the basis of, if this is true, this new report this morning is based on. Of course, there was to be this 3-week wait. So that would mean that from the new restrictions that came in, we're going to talk about the travel restrictions on PCR tests and of course the mask wearing and so on, that would need a 3-week period, and that would be the end of next week really. But this report in the Sun suggests that actually he's going to bring that forward, and perhaps this leak, if that's what it is, today is part of that, is getting the public prepared, because there's a really interesting quote in the report, which is they say, the Sun say, that ministers have said to them that they are gripped with a united fear that the public would never forgive them if they ruined Christmas for a second year running. Now, of course, that sounds like a political fear, and the scientists necessarily won't be happy about that. But there is, lots of questions really over whether, will he say that mask wearing that is now compulsory in public transport and in shops, will that go? Will we still have to take those PCR tests before we leave a foreign country coming back into the UK? Dominic Raab got into a bit of hot bother yesterday. Actually, he's the Deputy Prime Minister, of course, now. He said that actually, this is sort of has a really sort of little effect on Omicron spreading because it's now in the country. There are hundreds of cases here. But there are scientists who actually say, look, every small barrier that we can create is a good thing. And this is Vishal Sharma from the BMA who says this. And that sort of warning comes after the number of Omicron cases reported in the UK rose by 50%, actually, which leads into how infectious it is. In the last 24 hours, it takes a total to 246 here.
OK, Ranvir, thanks very much. Hoping that Christmas will be able to go ahead as expected. Is it going to be some festive cheer from the Prime Minister on that this morning?
This, of course, is just a report in the Sun newspaper. It's an exclusive report by them. And of course, perhaps it's been leaked to them because it would be nice for people to know whether they need to put their plans on hold or not. And perhaps it is partly based, if true, on what's coming out of South Africa and the scientists there. Of course, this is where Omicron was first detected. And there it's being assumed and seen in some of the data that, look, it's not as dangerous as perhaps was first feared. I mean, they don't know this yet. There was meant to be a 3-week review. Of course, this is only a week in to the new restrictions of wearing masks compulsorily in shops and on public transport, and these PCR tests if you're coming in from abroad, which we'll hear about in a moment. But yes, the signs are good. So scientists in South Africa say that the Omicron variant is more transmittable. So that basically means that when you catch it, the time between catching it and giving it to somebody else is much shorter than it was with the Delta variant and so on. But the good news is that people don't seem to be getting sicker with it. And in fact, the symptoms of the Omicron variant seem to be milder. So perhaps that is partly what Downing Street are really pinning everything on. And of course, there's a really interesting phrase in the Sun article this morning, which it says that ministers are gripped with a united fear the public would never forgive them if they ruin Christmas for the second year running. Now, that sounds like a political fear, and scientists won't necessarily be happy about decisions and policy being made on political basis as opposed to a scientific basis. Here's Vishal Sharma, who's from the British Medical Association, and he says that the restrictions we've got now need to be kept in place and not drawn back. Morning there about how many more cases there are of Omicron in this country seem to be true because in the last 24 hours the number of Omicron cases went up by 50%. There are now 246 people with this new variant in the UK. True, these reports in the Sun newspaper this morning could be based on the fact that scientists in South Africa say that from what they understand, the Omicron variant, though more transmissible and more infectious, actually is milder in the disease that the person has when they catch COVID, and that the vaccine programme is actually a very good defence against Omicron so far. And so perhaps if it's true, then Boris Johnson will feel confident that early next week, rather than at the end of next week, he can start saying that Christmas is back on.